الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الله أكبر. استغفر الله استغفر الله. اللهم لا مانع اللهم.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Inshallah ta'ala, we are continuing with our halaqah on Rawdat al-Aqala, the Gardens of the Intelligent, discussing the concept of the aql in Islam. We'll start with some reading from the book, inshallah. Continue from where we left off. In the work of Al-Imam Abu Hatim ibn Hibban al-Busti, rahimahullah. تفضل إن شاء الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سمعت معاوية بن قرة يقول: إن القوم لا يحجون ويعتمرون ويجاهدون ويصلون ويصومون وما يعطون يوم القيامة إلا على قدر عقولهم.
So this narration that Al-Imam ibn Hibban rahimahullah mentions is the statement that from one of the early Muslim scholars that verily people, they perform their hajj and they perform their umrah, they strive for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they perform their salah, they perform their fasting, yet on the day of judgment they will be rewarded according to the level of their aql. Now this initially sounds surprising. How do we explain this narration based on what we explained in terms of the Islamic concept of aql? Who can tell us? The people do their salah, their siyam, their hajj, their umrah, but on the day of judgment, they're rewarded based on their aql. How does that work? Yes. Mm-hmm. So you're saying he will be judged based on the deepness of his thought on the day of judgment. Okay? Any other thoughts? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, excellent. So aql includes your akhlaq, your moral values, and not only your dealings with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but your dealings with the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the other servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this shows us that the concept of the aql is more comprehensive, right? So these points are both good points, and they connect to the fact that people tend to reduce the deen, the religion, to just ritual actions, without understanding the meaning behind the actions, right? So people talk about zakat, siyam, salah, hajj, umrah, but what does it mean you will be rewarded based on your aql, based on how much these acts of ibadah bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and build your understanding of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, build your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, build your moral character, build your values, increase you in taqwa, increase you in birr, righteousness. All of that is from this Islamic concept of aql. Did you want to add a point? Okay, excellent. So it is true, what you're mentioning, this is a very important point, that the more one knows, the more one is accountable for. This is absolutely true in Islam. So the scholar, they have a higher level of accountability that they have to answer for before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the scholars of Islam, they mentioned, and actually it's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the Quran is either hujjatan lak or alayk. The Quran is either a proof for you or against you, depending on how much you act upon it. The term aql, yes, it includes ilm, it includes knowledge, it also includes amal, it also includes actions. So this is part of the understanding here. And one other point that I'll mention from the Quran is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about the udhiyah, the sacrifice, the ritual sacrifice that we do, the qurbani, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَن يَنَالَ اللَّهَ لُحُومُهَا وَلَا دِمَاؤُهَا وَلَكِنْ يَنَالُهُ التَّقْوَى مِنْكُمْ. It's not the blood or the meat of the animal that reaches Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is your taqwa, your fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that reaches Him. So the point of these actions of ibadah, the salah, the siyam, the zakat, the umrah, the hajj, the point of these actions is to increase our aql in this Islamic understanding of aql, to increase our understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to bring our hearts closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to purify our hearts, to purify our souls, to make us better human beings, to make us better worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to increase us in our tazkiyatun nafs. We mention often in Ramadan this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, رُبَّ صَائِمْ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ صِيَامِهِ إِلَّا الْجُوعُ وَرُبَّ قَائِمْ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ قِيَامِهِ إِلَّا السَّهَرُ. It might be that somebody stands the night in prayer and they get nothing out of it except for lack of sleep. And it might be somebody fasts the whole day and they get nothing out of it except for hunger, because it's not connected with the heart. It's not connected to developing their aql, their understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, transforming them to become a better worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the meaning of the aql here. Now, I'm going to pause here from reading from the book and go back to another theme that we've been talking about, which is tarikhul aql, the history of the aql. Because I have another segment of this that I want to share with you today. So we talked about the history of the aql, the history of the intellect in the time of Adam alayhi salam. How the intellect, how reasoning was first created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a faculty given to Adam alayhi salam, as a means by which to fulfill the capacity of khilafah, the capacity to serve on this earth as a moral custodian, as a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a vicegerent on this earth. So we talked about aql in that context. We talked about aql in terms of the mithaq, the covenant that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took with the children of Adam alayhi salam. We talked about aql in terms of the forces fighting against the aql. We talked about the waswas of shaitan. We talked about the opposition between truth and falsehood, and tawheed and shirk. Right? We talked about the forces of shirk and how shirk deforms the capacity of the aql to reason properly, to reason ethically. And we talked about that as well. So we're going to continue in our discussion on the history of the aql. We talked basically up until the time of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, and how the shirk started with the idol worship. How it started as, when they started to elevate the status of certain preachers amongst them. And the ones that are mentioned in the Quran, وَدًّا وَلَا سُوَعٌ وَلَا يَغُوثَ وَيَعُوقَ وَنَصْرَ, right? These 5 that were mentioned in the Quran, these are where the idol worship began. And we talked about how shirk propagated from that point. Now, today we're going to come to the time of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, and we're going to talk about the history of the aql in the time of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, and what are some of the things that we see in the stories the Quran describes about Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, and what are some of the lessons that we get in the history of the aql from that time and onward. We'll continue, we'll see how far we get. So when we come to the story of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Quran, we see a number of interesting stories that are mentioned. One of the beautiful stories that's mentioned in a few places in the Quran is the story of how Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam as a child started to give da'wah to his father and to his people. So his father was actually the one responsible for carving idols in their society. He was an idol maker, right? In a society of idol worshippers. And Ibrahim alayhi salam called him and invited him to the message of Islam in such a gentle way, with so much respect and kindness to his father, saying, Ya abati, oh my dear father. And his father responds not by saying, Ya bunayya, he says, قَالَ أَرَاغِبٌ أَنْتَ عَنْ آلِهَتِ يَا إِبْرَاهِيمِ. He said, are you abandoning our idols, O Ibrahim? لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ. He said, if you don't stop, I'm going to stone you. Leave me alone. Stop this preaching to me. And no matter what Ibrahim a.s. would say to him and invite him and tell him, Ya abati la ta'budi shaitan. Oh my father, do not follow do not obey shaitan. Do not worship shaitan in doing all this idol worship. His father refused to listen to him. So Ibrahim a.s. he said, even when his father rejected him, he still said, Sa'astaghfiru laka Rabbi. He said, I will ask forgiveness for you from my Lord. Right, this is the gentleness and the kindness of Ibrahim a.s. And he continued to give da'wah to his people. Now, what happened amongst his people, we know the story in the Quran, that when he would mention to his people the idol worship, Ibrahim a.s. would, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Anbiya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ رُشْدَهُ مِنْ قَبْلُ وَكُنَّا بِهِ عَالِمِينَ. And we had certainly given Ibrahim a.s. rushd, proper guidance, مِنْ قَبْلُ وَكُنَّا بِهِ عَالِمِينَ. And we were of him well knowing. Now, this statement is a reference to the fact that Ibrahim a.s. affirmed the reality of the fitrah. I mean, he affirmed the message of the fitrah. He was upon the fitrah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, even before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected him as a messenger, as a prophet, Ibrahim a.s. was following the truth that was conveyed to him by the fitrah. With the fitrah that all human beings are born upon, Ibrahim a.s. perfectly followed what his fitrah was teaching him. إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ما هذه التماثيل التي أنتم لها عاكفون. When he said to his father and his people, what are these statues to which you are devoted? قالوا وجدنا آباءنا لها عابدين. They said, we found our fathers worshipping them. قال لقد كنتم أنتم وآباؤكم في ضلال مبين. He points out this is not an excuse to say this is what our ancestors did. This is our culture. This is our tradition. He says this is not an excuse. You and your forefathers are together in clear misguidance. Then he says, then they said to him, قالوا أجئتنا بالحق أم أنت من اللاعبين. They said, have you come to us with truth, or are you of those who are just messing around with us? You're just playing games with us. قال بل ربكم رب السماوات والأرض الذي فطرهن وأنا على ذلكم من الشاهدين. He said, no, rather your Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth who created them, and I too am of those who testify. وَتَاللَّهِ لَأَكِيدَنَّ أَصْنَامَكُمْ بَعْدَ أَن تُوَلُّوا مُدْبِرِينَ. He said, and I swear by Allah, and some of the scholars of tafsir said that he mentioned this under his breath. He didn't mention this openly to them. He said to them, under his breath, he said, I swear by Allah, I will surely plan against your idols after you have turned and gone away. So what happened is they had this big festival where the people of the city, they go on the outskirts of the city. And they go outside and they celebrate and they have their huge festival. During that time, while they were celebrating their festival, Ibrahim a.s. he told them, Inni saqim. I'm feeling sick, right? And later on, Ibrahim a.s. mentions that this is one of the soft lies. It's not a true lie. What he meant is, I'm sick of what you're doing. But it's a soft lie, but it was done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So he said, Inni saqim. I'm sick of what you're doing, but he just said, I'm sick. So he didn't go with them out to the festival. And what he did when they left is then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَجَعَلَهُمْ جُذَاذًا إِلَّا كَبِيرًا لَهُمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ يَرْجِعُونَ. He broke all the idols into fragments, except the biggest of them, so that they may return to it. He has a plan in mind, right? So look at how Ibrahim a.s. didn't just give them da'wah, but he devised a technique to expose their inconsistency, to expose their foolishness in what they're doing. So he deliberately leaves the largest idol there, and the hammer that he uses to break the other idols, the axe, whatever it is, he places it in the hands of the biggest idol. So when they come back, they say, قَالُوا مَنْ فَعَلَ هَذَا بِآلِهَتِنَا إِنَّهُ لَمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. They said, who has done this to our gods? Indeed, he is of the wrongdoers. قالوا سمعنا فتى يذكرهم يقال له إبراهيم. They said, we heard of a youth mentioning our idols. He was talking bad about them. And people call him Ibrahim. He wasn't somebody well known. He was just a kid in the city. So they said, قالوا فأتوا به على أعين الناس لعلهم يشهدون. Bring him in front of the eyes of the people so that they can bear witness what he has done. So they bring him in front of all the people now. This youth who was preaching against them, now he is standing in front of all the people in the city. He has destroyed all their idols in the temple. And what do they say to him? They say, قالوا أأنت فعلت هذا بآلهتنا يا إبراهيم. Have you done this to our gods, O Ibrahim? قال بل فعله كبيرهم هذا فاسألوهم إن كانوا ينطقون. So look at what he says here. He says, rather the largest of them did it, so ask them if they should speak. The largest of them did it. This is the second of the what you could say white lies or soft lies. That is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The largest of them did it. And they say he's pointing with his finger, meaning my largest finger did it. But he's pointing at the idol, right? The largest of them did it. Ask him if they can speak. Ask him if they can speak. So this gets them to now start doubting themselves. They start doubting their own false creed. فَرَجَعُوا إِلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ فَقَالُوا إِنَّكُمْ أَنْتُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ ثُمَّ نُكِسُوا عَلَى رُؤُوسِهِمْ لَقَدْ عَلِمْتَ مَا هَؤُلَاءِ يَنْطِقُونَ. So first they started to blame themselves and they start to say to one another, verily you are the wrongdoers. إِنَّكُمْ أَنْتُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Which is interesting. Look at how initially they said, مَنْ فَعَلَ هَذَا بِآلِهَتِنَا إِنَّهُ لَمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. First they're thinking that dhulm, injustice, wrongdoing, is the one who did this to our idols. Now they are switching completely and they're saying dhulm is what we're doing, believing that these idols are something to be worshipped. But they fall back to their tradition. They fall back to their pride. They fall back to submission to their authority, their culture, their leaders. And then they reversed what they were thinking. They suppress their fitrah that's telling them what you're doing is not making sense. They suppress that fitrah and then they say, لَقَدْ عَلِمْتَ مَا هَؤُلَاءِ يَنْطِقُونَ. They said, you already know these idols don't speak. And that's exactly what Ibrahim a.s. was waiting for, that acknowledgement. That's the quote-unquote logical trap that he had set for them. When they said this, he was able to expose their inconsistency. So he said, قَالَ أَفَتَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكُمْ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَضُرُّكُمْ أُفٍّ لَكُمْ وَلِمَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. He said, do you worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that which does not benefit you nor harms you? Uff to you. Uff is a word of contempt. Right? Uff to you and what you worship besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. And this is why I mentioned this in the history of the aql. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Do you not use your aql? So the aql should allow a person to realize when they're doing something that doesn't make sense. The aql should protect a person from falling into shirk. The aql should lead a person to the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The aql should allow a person to recognize the truth when it is presented with them. The aql should make a person realize not to follow something simply because it's convention or cultural tradition or the way of the ancestors. The aql should make a person recognize that something should be followed because it is the truth, because it makes sense, because it leads me to that which is virtuous. That is how the aql should be used. So we see in the story of Ibrahim a.s., and this is not the only example, there's actually multiple stories in the Quran about Ibrahim a.s. and the use of the aql. But we see one of the major themes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights in the stories of Ibrahim a.s. is the use of the aql in the da'wah. Okay, so we talked before about the connection of the aql to fitrah, the connection of the aql to the mithaq, the connection of the aql to tawheed and how it's disconnected from shirk. And now we're talking about the connection of the aql to da'wah. The connection of the aql to da'wah. So one of the important things we need to realize from this, when we use the term faith to translate religion, right? When we say Islam is a faith, realize some of the connotations that has in the West. Because in the West, the term faith has been used as the opposite of reason. This is a tradition that goes back to some major thinkers in the history of Western Christianity, like Kierkegaard. He said, I have sought to deny reason to make room for faith. I've sought to deny aql to make room for faith. In fact, some people even define faith as belief in the absence of evidence. And according to this is not how we understand faith in Islam. It's not how we understand Iman. Iman is according to the aql. So this is a big difference between the Islamic understanding of religion and the popular notion of religion in the West, including how many Christian thinkers themselves presented religion as religion being something that is opposed to reason. And how often do you hear in popular discourse people say, you just have to believe, right? You just have to have faith. Don't ask questions. Don't try to understand it. Just believe. Just have faith. They even use the word faith as an antonym, as an opposite to reason. So this leads to a very important understanding. When we translate terms from Islam into English, we have to be aware of how this term, the original term in Arabic, fits into our Quranic vocabulary and the implications it has in that vocabulary, and how the term in English fits into the existing thought structure in the West and the implications it has in the West. We have to be careful about that. So I'm not saying you can't ever use the term faith to translate Islam. Sometimes I do. But I have to add an explanation that in Islam, faith is built on reason. Faith is inherently rational in Islam. It is a rational act. In fact, it is the fulfillment of our rationality. There is no such thing as being rational outside of faith, outside of having a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, outside of understanding your worldview, outside of understanding your purpose in life. There is no such thing as being rational if you're going to negate your purpose in life. So, from the Islamic perspective, faith and rationality are synonymous. They are the same thing. I'm not even saying they go together. I'm saying they are the same thing. They are both encompassed in this understanding of aql. They're encompassed in this understanding of aql. So that is the understanding of faith in Islam. Yes, you had a question. Mm-hmm. Right? Right. Yes. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Excellent. So this is a very, very important question. This question is like the theme of this whole talk as we're going to continue talking about this history of the aql, because what your question is getting at is there is a difference between saying that something contradicts the aql versus saying something is beyond my aql. Okay? So for example, when I drive my car, okay, I'm not a car mechanic. I don't understand how the car works, right? I get in the car and I have a level of trust that when I turn on the car, it's not going to explode. Right? And this is just based on the assurances of people who are experts in the field. They're in the automotive industry. They built the car. They understand how it works. And they tell me this car is safe to drive. Right? So there's a level of trust. But there's nothing about that trust that contradicts the aql. Okay? So there are things in Islam that may be supra-rational. They may be above and beyond our reasoning. But there's nothing in Islam that is irrational, illogical, that contradicts our reasoning. So these are two different levels. And this is a distinction that Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, amongst others, he made this point, that there might be some things that are beyond our understanding. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears every one of us when we make dua. Now, if you try to imagine, how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hear us? For the first difficulty that might come to mind is, well, there's so many people praying at the same time, right? How are these voices separated out, right? Or you might think, well, even our voices are vibration of air molecules. And we hear because those vibrations, they hit our tympanic membrane, and that is transferred from a mechanical vibration into an electrochemical signal in our brain. But what does hearing mean for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? It's beyond our comprehension. So there's something, when we talk about any of the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or even anything about the ghaib, when we talk about belief in the angels, for example, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ describing when he saw Angel Jibreel ﷺ in his true form, completely encompassing the horizon. Now, how does this work? Angel Jibreel ﷺ has 600 wings. How does that look like, right? These are things that are beyond our comprehension. We understand, even from a scientific perspective, if we just talk to somebody just from the perspective of science, the human being has a finite perception, right? When it comes to vision, we see only a narrow portion of the spectrum of electromagnetic radiation, right? In fact, you can precisely measure it. We see from 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers. This is the visible spectrum of light. Anything outside of this we can't see. There are other animals, like snakes can see infrared. There's other animals that have different levels of perception. Even hearing, we hear one small spectrum. We hear from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Okay, bats can hear something else, right? And dolphins can hear something else. But what we hear is just, and as you get older, your hearing actually decreases, right? So high-pitched noises, kids can hear them better than adults, right? They have these things called mosquito ringtones, where the kids in high school, at least they used to be the case, they'd have this, there's ringtone goes off and the teacher doesn't hear it, but the kids hear it, right? So we know that your perception is limited. So there's no reason to assume that our aql as well is not also limited, right? If an ant crawls across my keyboard, right? The ant has no understanding of what this keyboard can possibly be about, right? So there are certain things when we talk about reality, when we talk about the lawh mahfuz, when we talk about qadar, when we talk about iman and the angels and how Allah revealed the Quran and all these different realities, we have to recognize there's a level that is beyond our comprehension, where we say we don't understand the kayfiyah, we don't understand the how-ness of it. But there's nothing inherently irrational in believing this. Versus when you come to something like, the fundamental doctrines of Christianity, for example, right? When you talk about something like the doctrine of the Trinity, there are three in one, right? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Each of these is God, but at the same time, there's only one. And the Father is not the Son is not the Holy Ghost, right? That is just a fundamental contradiction. It is irrational. It doesn't make sense. No matter how many ways you can explain it, and they use the analogy, well, it's like the egg, and there's the yolk, and there's a shell, and okay, that's like different parts. There's still only one egg, one yolk, one egg white. No matter how many analogies you come up with, there's many of their priests and leaders will say, and theologians will say, this is just a mystery. There's no way to explain it. So that's something that's just fundamentally irrational. The idea that God died for the sins of human beings, fundamentally irrational. Right? So there's a difference between something being irrational, illogical, versus something being, something that makes sense, but in terms of how it occurs, it's beyond our imagination. Even within science, right? Like there are things that our scientists affirm are the case, but it's beyond our imagination, right? So we talk about how there's 3 dimensions in space. We talk about now, many different dimensions. We talk about the multiverse. We talk about multiple different dimensions, and we recognize there's no reason to be restricted to 3 dimensions in space. But what does a 4th dimension look like? A 5th dimension, 6th dimension. Can any of us imagine this? We have complex mathematical operations to try to talk about it using the language of mathematics, but in terms of understanding it with our aql, we can't actually visualize it or envision it. So we understand that our aql can lead us to a point where we say, I recognize this is the truth, but how it occurs may be beyond my imagination. And that's getting to the answer of when you talk about the statement of Ali radiallahu anh. Ali radiallahu anh said that when it comes to wiping over the socks, if the deen was based on our reasoning, our own opinions, then we would wipe the bottom, which is dirty, rather than the top. But rather we hear and we obey. Okay, so now how do we apply this? The answer is, when it comes to understanding the message of Islam, there are the fundamental doctrines of Islam, the message of Islam, the overall worldview that Islam is giving us. And everything about that makes sense. And that worldview tells us we've been created with a purpose. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us. There are certain instructions we've been given. Now, if you look at the instructions that we've been given, we know that some of those instructions, the point of them is just to establish our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are wisdoms that may be beyond our imagining, beyond our comprehension. Especially when it comes to the fiqh of ibadat. So Ash-Shatibi, one of the great scholars of Islamic law and maqasid of Sharia, the objectives of Islamic law, he said that when you look at Islamic law, right, generally speaking, you can divide this into two categories. You have the ibadat, the ritual or devotional acts of worship. So salah, siyam, hajj, umrah, these kind of things. And then you have the mu'amalat, right? The laws and rulings related to social interaction. Okay, so marriage, divorce, inheritance, issues of testimony, matters of criminal punishment, these kind of things. He said in this domain, in the mu'amalat, things are based on the illah, understanding, using our reasoning, understanding what is the underlying principle Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has established for this. Whereas in the ibadat, these are not connected to some kind of rational illah. They are devotional, meaning the point of them is to increase our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that pleases Him. So in those, we don't say, well, why is it that we pray 4 rak'ahs instead of 5 rak'ahs? Why is it that we put our hands here instead of putting our hands in some other way, right? We don't question or somebody says, wudu, somebody once asked this question, why is it if I break my wudu in the middle of wudu, why is it that I have to start from the beginning? Why can't I just continue from where I left off? The rest is still wet, it's still, and it's like, this is where there's no value in trying to question this aspect, because this is instituted for the sake of bringing our hearts closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by following His instructions exactly as they have been given to us. So these are two different domains. So that's another part of it. But it's an excellent question. I'm glad you raised that, because this is actually where there was a lot of confusion in the history of our ummah. And that's what we're going to talk about. So we see how the aql has a clearly defined role in establishing the truth by following the fitrah, following the guidance that will lead us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, finding the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all around us, and how the aql has a role in the da'wah that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam gives to his people. Now, if you look at what happened historically, yes, you have a question? Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah, there is a fallacy here. There's a mistaken reasoning when people do this. So there's a lot of people who they look at something, the scientific study comes out and says, oh, intermittent fasting has been found to be good for your health, and they say, see, that's why we fast in Ramadan. No, that's not why we fast in Ramadan, right? The reason why we fast in Ramadan is there in the Quran, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may attain taqwa. You can say these are additional wisdoms, right, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought about different benefits, but that is not the illah. So there's a difference between hikmah and illah. Illah is the basis for which the ruling is established. Okay? The hikmah, there can be many different hikam. There can be many different wisdoms, many potential benefits, many masalih, many benefits that come about from a particular ruling. But we don't point at one wisdom and say, well, that's exactly what the reason why the ruling has come down. Because ultimately we don't know all the wisdoms, right? So that's where we have to accept, we have to have some intellectual humility and accept where our aql goes and what is also beyond our aql. Part of rationality is to accept that there are things beyond my rationality, right? Part of rationality is to accept that there are things beyond my rationality. So that's accepting that there are certain wisdoms that are beyond the level that I can understand. So for example, also it comes up with eating pork, right? When Muslims are giving da'wah, and why don't Muslims eat pork? Well, did you know that there are diseases that can be caused by eating pork? For example, there are tapeworms that live in pig meat, right? And this meat, if it's eaten, a person can develop teniasis from this worm, Taenia solium, and if it lays eggs in that person's feces, and another person comes in contact with it, they will get those pig worm eggs in their brain, which is called neurocysticercosis. The only reason why I know that is as part of my job to know that as a neuroradiologist, because we see that on brain scans if a patient has that. But this is something that can happen. Is that the reason why we don't eat pork? No. Right? That's not the reason why we don't eat pork. Right? So the reason why we don't eat it, this is a test that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has established for us, and we're meant to follow the instructions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designated this animal as something that is impure, has forbidden us from eating from it, and that's just the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, you see this when it comes to the test that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to Adam alayhi salam in Jannah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not eat from this tree. Now this is a difference between the Quranic narrative and the biblical narrative. In the biblical narrative, it's the tree of immortality, it's this and that, all these different things. In the Quran, it's just a tree. And Shaitan says about it, هل أدلك على شجرة الخلد وملك لا يبلى. Shaitan says that this is the tree that will make you live forever, whatever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never says that about the tree. It could just be one random tree. And it's just a test. Don't eat from this tree. And Shaitan, he beautifies it for Adam alayhi salam and entices him to eat from that tree. But it's just a simple test. So in the same way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala picks a single tree and says, don't eat from this tree. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala picks certain instructions for us. Don't do this, right? And the only meaning of that for us is to test our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commandments. There may be additional wisdoms and benefits that come about from it, but the ultimate reasoning for the ruling, the ultimate basis for the ruling, is our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and striving to follow His commandments. And that is how we develop the attribute of taqwa. Taqwa is developed by striving to follow the instructions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in spite of all the temptations that surround us. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Yeah, so you don't need to know what is the wisdom behind it, right? We know that it is reasonable to follow it because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to do this, and we know our purpose in life is to follow the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and follow the instructions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if we do that, we will be successful in the next life. We don't need to ask, well, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ask me to do this or not to do this, right? We know there are wisdoms behind it. We can talk about those wisdoms, but our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not based upon knowing these wisdoms. Make sense? Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, so Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam never doubted that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give life to the dead. But what Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam wanted to see is a sign that would increase his iman. Right? So that's how the scholars explain it. So they mentioned that yaqeen can sometimes, or shak actually in this case, because the Prophet ﷺ made an interesting statement about this story. The Prophet ﷺ said, نَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِالشَّكِّ مِنْ Ibrahim. We are more entitled to doubt than Ibrahim alayhi salam. But they mention that doubt here refers to seeking a higher level of yaqeen. Okay, so Ibrahim alayhi salam knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give life to the dead. But he's seeking a higher level of yaqeen where he goes from ilm al-yaqeen to ayn al-yaqeen, right? He wants to go from having knowledge at a theoretical level of this reality. He wants to witness it directly. So that when he gives da'wah to people, he is giving da'wah based on what he has seen directly. And so then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him, take these birds, cut them into pieces, spread them on the different mountaintops, call them to you, and they will all, the pieces will reassemble and they will all come to life. Right? So this is a tremendous miracle Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows Ibrahim alayhi salam. So what this shows us is, yes, the illah, he understands the basis of believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ability to resurrect. But it's analogous to seeking the wisdoms, right? Somebody might say, okay, Ya Allah, I understand that alcohol is prohibited, but allow me to understand more of the wisdoms. Then they do research and they find out that alcohol is linked to the vast majority of violent crimes. They find that alcohol, when it enters the body, it poisons every single organ within the body. They find out now the medical evidence shows there's no safe amount of drinking alcohol. Any amount of alcohol that you drink is harmful for you, right? So all of these are now wisdoms that increase their understanding and their iman goes up. They were never questioning, should I obey this command or not? But they're seeking a higher level of yaqeen. So in that way, and Jazakallah khair for asking that question because it is analogous. In that way, it's analogous to the question of Ibrahim alayhi salam, going from the illah to the hikmah, not for the sake of questioning the ruling, but for seeking a higher level of yaqeen. Make sense? Yes. Yeah. So this goes back to like ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة. Call to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with wisdom and beautiful preaching. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put wisdom first. Part of wisdom is knowing the context and what is appropriate for that context, right? So knowing how much, when, who your audience is, all of these situational factors, right? So if you get asked something in an elevator conversation, you only have like 10 seconds, right? So you're not going to go into, well, first of all, Islam is based on belief in Allah, Iman billah. You go through the 6 pillars of Iman, and then, you're following them out the elevator and you're still talking to them. You don't have the time to do that, right? And you also want to know your audience and understand what appeals to them. So usually if somebody asks me about fasting, for example, a coworker, then I will mention that fasting is an opportunity for us to focus on spiritual development, building our connection with God and increasing our charity to the poor and the needy by remembering their hunger as we go through this period of hunger. It's like one-liner, and it summarizes the spiritual message of fasting and also summarizes some of the other wisdoms that actually scholars of Islam mentioned as well. Right? Some of the early scholars of Islam, they mentioned, Lima shuri'a siyam. Why was fasting prescribed? And they said, so that the rich person would taste the hunger of the poor person, so he wouldn't forget the poor person. Right? So that's a wisdom that you can mention, and it connects with people emotion because they see there is so much poverty in the world today. And under this capitalist system, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And we have so many billionaires, and then we have this devastating level of hunger where children are literally just starving to death. And people realize that there's something profoundly immoral in the world. And just hearing about the message behind fasting and realizing this is something that 1.8 billion Muslims believe in, this can be incredibly inspiring to a person and open their eyes up to the fact that this is the true message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This message that invites people to reconnect with their Creator and to fulfill their ethical duty towards the rest of creation. It's a beautiful message. So having that wisdom of knowing how and when and why to use, it can be very powerful. Make sense? Right. So the other story that's mentioned about Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, after he gives da'wah to his people and they rejected his da'wah and he broke the idols, what did they say? They said, حرقوه. They said, burn him. They created a huge pit of fire. They threw Ibrahim alayhi salam into the fire, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the fire, قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. We said to the fire, be a source of coolness and peace for Ibrahim alayhi salam. So there's this miracle. Ibrahim alayhi salam, this youth, is thrown into the fire and he emerges from the fire unscathed. Now imagine, he went from being somebody that nobody really knew. They said, we heard of this youth, يُقَالُ لَهُ Ibrahim. Now he's somebody who everybody knows about. He is invited to come to see the ruler at that time, the ruler of Iraq, of Babylon at that time. The historians mention his name is Nimrud, right? So he's called before Nimrud, who is one of the people who denied the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Taymiyyah mentions in the Quran there are two characters who deny the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are two historical figures that are mentioned in the Quran who deny the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Two atheists in the Quran. One of them is Nimrud and the other is Fir'aun, right? He says Fir'aun denies it outwardly and Nimrud denies it both outwardly and inwardly. Fir'aun denies it outwardly because he says that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُمْ ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا. They denied it outwardly even though inside they knew it was the truth, right? So anyways, Nimrud, he says that, I am, he calls Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ibrahim alayhi salam gives him the da'wah that I'm calling you to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, what are you talking about? I am God, right? And he says, I am the Lord. And Ibrahim alayhi salam says, my Lord is the one who gives life and death. So now this is another example of jadal, of debate in the da'wah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So we already saw one example of debate in the da'wah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Now we're seeing example number 2, his dialogue with the king. So he says, my Lord is the one who gives life and death. Very clear argument. Now the king tries to pull off this stunt. He says, look, and he tells his guards to bring 2 prisoners who are on death row. They're both sentenced to be killed. He said, this one, I pardon. I've given him life. This one, yallah, kill him. He's like, look, I gave death. I gave life, I gave death. So what he did is he presented a kind of twisted logic to respond to what Ibrahim alayhi salam's clear argument. Now, Ibrahim alayhi salam had 2 options at this point. He can either engage in a very, complicated process of removing this person's misconceptions and showing how he's twisting his reasoning and all this kind of stuff and exposing the flaws in his logic and saying, no, the definition of giving life is this. The definition of giving death is this. But he does something very simple and clear that ends the debate in 1 second. He says, my Lord is the one who brings the sun from the east. Can you bring it from the west? فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. Right? The one who disbelieved was immediately finished, right? He was dumbfounded. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give hidayah, guidance, to those who reject Him. So, in this debate, there's another powerful lesson about how the aql is being used in da'wah. And it shows us that it is better for us to pursue simple and clear lines of argument rather than complicated and convoluted ways of reasoning. Even if those ways of reasoning could get to the point, but there's more value in being simple and straightforward. And I want you to just kind of put a pin in that because we'll come back to that later as we kind of see how the history of the aql develops. So this is the second example from Ibrahim alayhi salam's debate. And this is or from his use of the aql in da'wah. The third example, and it's one that actually the scholars of tafsir had a lot of discussion about, it is the dialogue between Ibrahim alayhi salam and the star worshippers. The star worshippers. Okay? The dialogue between Ibrahim alayhi salam and those who worship the stars. So, you have a question? Oh, okay, I thought you were raising your hand. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, and this comes in Surah Al-An'am, وكذلك نري إبراهيم ملكوت السماوات والأرض وليكون من الموقنين. Thus did we show Ibrahim alayhi salam the signs of the heavens and the earth, so that he could be amongst those with yaqeen, with true certainty. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the story. When night came and he saw a star, he said, هذا ربي, this is my Lord. Then when it disappeared, he said, I do not like those that disappear. Then he saw the moon come out. Right? He saw the moon appear. He say, this is my Lord. And then when the moon disappeared, he said, if my Lord does not guide me, I will be amongst the misguided. Then the sun came out, and he said, هذا ربي, هذا أكبر. He said, this is my Lord, this is the biggest. And then when the sun set, then he said, فلما أفلت قال يا قوم إني بريء مما تشركون. He said, oh my people, I am free of that which you associate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, there's two major opinions, and then the opinions divide into sub-opinions, but there are two major opinions about this story. Was it maqam al-nazar or maqam al-munazara? Okay, was this Ibrahim alayhi salam personally investigating and trying to come to the truth himself? Was it his own personal journey to the truth? Or was it his method of debate in da'wah? Okay, and both opinions exist in the scholars of tafsir. So, I'll explain both views. So, one view says this is Ibrahim alayhi salam's personal journey in coming to the truth, right? This is showing that he is following the fitrah as a child. So the scholars who mentioned this, they mentioned that this would have happened when he was a child, okay? Not when he was an adult. It would have happened when he was a child. Ibn Jarir al-Tabari mentions those scholars who mentioned this view. That it happened when he was a child, before he reached the age of maturity. This is even as a child, growing up in a society that has all these messed up beliefs and mythologies and ideas, he's still able to come to the truth because he has that pure fitrah and he's following that fitrah and he's reasoning. He's reasoning that the stars, the moon, the sun, all of these, they come and they go. They don't have a overwhelming presence, right? That they're always present, that they're always controlling everything in our lives. Our Lord must be one who is in control of all these celestial objects. Now, there is a other discussion related to the story, and I won't get into it now, but it comes because of an argument that was raised that the reason why he's saying this is not my Lord is because it's moving. It's undergoing motion. And there's a reason why people raise that argument, because they had the idea that motion, this is based on an Aristotelian idea, that motion is something that is a characteristic of physical bodies, physical objects. So anything that changes is a physical entity, and therefore God cannot have any change. He cannot be characterized by motion. This was an idea that some people came up with, and they tried to read it into the story of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And scholars who responded to them pointed out, if that were the case, he would have pointed out when the sun rose, it's already moving. It doesn't make sense, right? Why would he then say, this is my Lord? So that's just a side point. Anyways, so this is one view, is that this was part of his own personal quest to find the truth. The second view is the view of other scholars of tafsir, that this is something that he did as a debate. And there's some indications in the story itself. At the end he says, Ya qawmi inni bari'um mimma tushrikun. So it's implied that there's a dialogue happening between him and his people. So his people, it wasn't just him on his own coming to these, making these statements. He's making them in the presence of his people. He's saying publicly. And some of the scholars even went further and said, like, when he's saying Hada Rabbi, he's like, okay, you guys say this is my Lord. Let's say this is my Lord. Okay, what happened now? It's gone, right? Clearly, it's not in control of everything. How is it controlling the universe and it's disappeared, right? Basically, this kind of argument. So, this dialogue was meant as it's not maqam al-nadar, it's maqam al-munadara. It is a debate between him and his people. It's another example of Ibrahim a.s. jadal, his debate in da'wah, in his calling people to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, showing inconsistency. And this is an important point. Everything that you see in the story of Ibrahim a.s., it shows us inconsistencies in the position of other people, right? And that's his technique to bring them to the truth, to show us that what they're upon doesn't make sense. And this is actually an interesting point, because when we talk about jadal itself, is debate itself the form of da'wah, or is it a form of establishing proof against a person? This is another interesting question. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan." Ibn Taymiyyah says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, actually, call to the way of your Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching, and debate with them in the way that is best. He doesn't include debating as a method of da'wah. It is another action that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to do. So invite using wisdom and beautiful preaching. Present the message of Islam in the most beautiful way. If somebody doesn't want to accept the message of Islam, that's when you use the arguments of debate to show the inconsistency in their position. And that's a really interesting point. I always found this interesting, because my experience in giving da'wah is that when you start by debating with the person, they already put up their defenses. And a lot of people approach da'wah purely from the perspective of debate. They say, oh, let's bring an atheist, let's bring a Muslim, let's bring an evangelical, let's bring a Muslim, let's have a big debate, and that's going to be the best way to do da'wah. And actually what happens is the cheerleaders for this side come, the cheerleaders for that side come, and everybody's just cheering on their side. And there's very little da'wah happening because people have their guard up, right? Actually, there's a brother who converted to Islam who mentioned that before he became Muslim, and he was Hindu, he mentioned that before he became Muslim, he remembers a Muslim like attacking his religion, like Hinduism, and he said that actually got his guard up. It didn't make him want to become Muslim. And he said if he were to go back as a Muslim, he would tell that person, you're not actually doing da'wah in the way that is most beneficial, because you're getting the person's guard up. You want to do wisdom and beautiful preaching. And then if somebody refuses, then you show inconsistencies to get them to think more deeply. Right? That's a way of trying to open up the knot. If they're trying to tie a knot between themselves and you, that's a way of loosening the knot. But that's not your first line strategy. That's a really deep point as well when it comes to da'wah. So debate usually gets people to think in a adversarial approach. My team versus your team, us versus them. It doesn't get a person to actually reflect. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَعِذُكُمْ بِوَاحِدَةٍ. Say, I only am asking you to do one thing. أَن تَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ مَثْنَى وَفُرَادَى ثُمَّ تَتَفَكَّرُوا مَا بِصَاحِبِكُم مِّن جِنَّةٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I'm only asking you to tell people, I'm only asking you to do one thing. Stand up for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reflecting, either as an individual or in pairs. Right? And then just think about it. Think about the question, verily your companion is not mad. Verily your companion, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it doesn't make sense to think that he's somebody who's insane. Right? So he's not coming at it from the point of just arguing with them. He's saying, look, you go home and just think about it. Just say, I'm asking you to just do one thing. Please go and sincerely reflect on this question, either as one individual or as two individuals, right? Go and just discuss it with another person. But don't go with a big group and start cheering on your group and trying to put down the other group. And when you get into a big group, you start to engage in groupthink. So groupthink is one of the things that undermines the aql, because you just look at what other people are saying around you. And you get stuck in the mob mentality. You're not able to get outside of the mob mentality. Right? Any questions? Yes. Mhm. It can be very different from the debating because in my experience, like most of the time when you present it in a way that's not adversarial, people are asking genuinely because they want to know and they want to understand. There are some people who will ask because they want to debate, right? They want to try, and when you're responding, they're hardly listening to your answer before they're trying to think of a way to object to it. They're like, well, what about if, and they're already, I'm like, okay, just don't try to think so hard of an objection. Just first try to understand the answer I'm giving you. Um, Rather than trying to find something wrong with the answer that I'm giving you. First try to reflect on the answer. Maybe it is the truth, right? And that's something actually the prophets mentioned in the Quran as well. أَرَأَيْتُمْ إِن كُنْتُ عَلَى بَيِّنَةٍ, right? Have you not considered the possibility that maybe I'm on clear proof from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Just consider that possibility. So the line of question and answer, when you say ask a question, right? People can ask a question with two very different intentions. And there's actually a statement from Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu about this as well. He said, ask tafaqquhan, seeking understanding, and not seeking to argue. There's a difference between those two. And even this is a good point for the etiquette of the student of knowledge. When you're asking, always try to ask with the intention of, how can I understand this point better? So when you ask the sheikh a question, for example, some people make this mistake where they say, well, how can you say that when this? They phrase their question as though it's an objection. Instead, you should say, Sheikh, could you elaborate on this point? How do we understand this correctly? Or how can I understand this correctly, the implications of this point that you're mentioning, right? Or how do we reconcile this with this point? Rather than, how can you say that when so-and-so says this, or when this objection says this, right? It's a totally different way, a totally different mindset of asking questions. And you benefit more when you ask the questions with the line of seeking understanding. Make sense? You had a question? Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I find that this is a question that I've only ever received from evangelical Christians because someone taught them that this is part of your script when you speak to Muslims, that Muslims don't know that they're going to heaven and you know you're going to heaven. So point out, well, how can you follow this religion when you're not 100% sure that you're going to heaven? And I always find it such a bizarre objection because why would you want to be a part of a religion that tells you you're going to heaven no matter what you do? Right? No matter whether your conduct is ethical or unethical, no matter how you choose to live your life, all your choice in life don't matter. Here is your guarantee, free ticket to heaven, and that is what religion is about. That just doesn't make sense as a religion, right? So that actually, to me, shows the opposite. It actually shows that we don't enter into the deen seeking a get out of jail free card. That's not the point of it. The deen is supposed to transform us to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And yes, our deeds are not what earns us Jannah, because no amount of deeds can ever earn us Jannah, but our deeds are a means of seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ said that none of you enters into Jannah based on your deeds. And the companions asked him, even you, Ya Rasulullah? He said, even me. It's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy that allows us to enter into Jannah. That doesn't mean, however, that we're in this situation where we're like, oh, I have no clue. Am I going to Jannah or am I going to hell? It's like, I know exactly what I need to do to get to Jannah. Right? I know exactly what I have to do. Now, I should always have the humility and the introspection to say, you know, I should never feel complacent and think, oh yeah, I've earned my place in Jannah. No, no Muslim thinks like that. And you can't be an ethical individual if you think like that. If you think like, yeah, I've earned my place in Jannah. No, You should think, like, okay, I know what I have to do. Allah and His Messenger have made it very clear what I have to do, but I need to work harder. And I should never be satisfied or complacent with what I've already done. I have absolute certainty in the path that will take me to Jannah. Even if I'm not certain that I've yet done enough, that's okay. But I'm certain in the path that I have to walk. And that's where they get confused, right? Because they're not able to separate the certainty in the path from the certainty in where I am on the path. Having certainty in where you are on the path, that's not a prerequisite to finding the truth or getting to Jannah. But having certainty that this path is the correct path, that is what's necessary. And I can be absolutely certain that a path that tells you no matter what you do, here's your free ticket to heaven. You just have to believe that Christ died for your sins and that's it. You got a clean slate. That doesn't make sense. And there's no way that can lead to true ethical development for somebody seeking to develop themselves, striving against their desires, striving against temptation, striving to build virtue within themselves, telling them, here's your get out of jail free card. That's not what creates an ethical civilization. Right? And that is our principal concern as Muslims. That's our objection to, ultimately we believe Islam is the truth. And whatever contradicts that truth is not true, right? Truth does not contradict truth. So this is our principal concern about anyone who has that type of ideology that goes against the truth. Yeah, follow up.